Okay, and we're live, I think. So hello, everyone. Welcome back to the latest installment of the Thomas and Dan Show. I'm Dan Bennett. He's Thomas Barnes. And first one we've done of these for a while. It's good to be back. We're hoping that you'll find this a very engaging, insightful session. As if you've been to one of these sessions before, I'm sure you always find them insightful and engaging. Today, we're going to be basically delving deeper into DevOps roadmaps and all the ins and outs to do with that. So why do business need to get excited about it? How do we go about implementing that at a technical level? And how do you make effective change, essentially?
Let me buzz in there. I'm Thomas. This is the Dan and Thomas show, or vice versa.
Thomas
and as well as why does the business get excited about DevOps? How about thinking about the other way around? The business is already excited about what DevOps delivers. How do we get the engineering teams excited about actually delivering it? And some organizations may be coming at it from one angle and some from the other. But ultimately, this is where business and technology should be walking hand in hand with the same set of requirements. And it should be something which is good for everyone. But at the same time, as I'm sure you've experienced, there are often a lot of hiccups on the road to DevOps adoption. So we're going to have a bit of a think about those today and some of the practical steps that we've used in the past or that we've seen, how to get over those humps and get DevOps adoption, which delivers the outcomes for everyone.
Yeah, you said that better than I. You can take the intros next time. So I'm Dan. I guess just to tee up who we are. So we are kind of experts in the field and we know what we're talking about here. So I'm a DevOps practice director at Capacitas. Been here for 10 years and I've worked with multiple clients, helping them along their DevOps journey, basically enabling DevOps to become a major part of the organization. Then you've got yourself, Thomas.
Yeah, I'm Thomas Barnes, the service design director at Capacitas, working mainly at the moment with finance and public sector clients, but worked with various other clients in the past as well. And my main thing is around designing solutions that deliver things faster, cheaper, better. And DevOps done properly is a key part of that.
Absolutely. So throughout this talk, there'll be opportunities to raise questions. You can do that through the LinkedIn chat. Feel free to post them, and we've got people on standby feeding us the information. So we'll hopefully, if you've got questions, we will answer them to the best of our ability.
So those people are on standby. And while we will be talking, we're going to try not to monologue more than we have to. And if people have got questions, we want to break off and answer them. We want this to be as much of a conversation as possible. So this is very much not we know all the answers or know what you're thinking. So if you can tell us what you're thinking or tell us if you've got a better answer, that would be very much appreciated as well.
This is quite a big topic and it is quite easy to get into a monologue. So please help us break up the monologue. That'd be fantastic. There are so many questions we could start with, Thomas, really on this. So I guess you've got the concept of what is DevOps? Why do you need a roadmap? Why is it important to consider? Why should the business care about it? How do we get them caring about it, getting them excited about it? How do we get the teams excited? It's hard to know where to start, really. Yeah, from your experience.
I think you got to start why you're doing it, right? Because a lot of organizations I've been in, they're doing DevOps or DevSecOps or Dev something ops, insert what you like there, because someone thinks it's a good idea or because someone thinks that is going to solve all the problems in the universe. And a lot of the time, it hasn't really been thought through what it's actually going to deliver for the business, why the business should care about it, why they should pay to make it happen, because you're not going to achieve business and organizational change for free. It's going to involve technology, it's going to involve training, it's going to involve people. So why should we do it is probably the place to start.
Okay, why?
You want me to answer that one?
Well, no, it's okay. I mean, to be fair, it's very easy, and I've seen it in organizations and places before, right, where people get very hung up on DevOps as the buzzword without actually knowing for what it is, for how to do it, but then key for why. I think people just tend to throw that around as a bit of a buzzword and, kind of, oh, we do DevOps, or yes, we know DevOps, when actually in practice they don't really.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I like talking about DevOps is because if you put yourself in the seat of a CIO, maybe you are a CIO, but imagine that you're in charge of technology. What is it that you get hounded about by the business? What is it the business really care about? And they, you're being knocked up in the middle of the night, or you're getting angry phone calls if you don't do. At the end of the day, the thing that you care about, because it's what the business cares about, is that technology delivers, that it works. Very simply, okay, it's easy to say, harder to do. That it delivers fast, so business has a great idea, you can get that idea out sometime before 6 months' time when everyone's doing it or when it's out of date, and that you can do it cheaply, as in within your budget, and that you haven't got to keep going back asking for extra budget for things. And conversely, the things that keep every CIO awake are my budget's going to get exceeded, the system's going down, and that backlog of change the business wants, it's going to take at least 10 years to deliver because there's so much of it, and we release every whatever weeks, and you can't make the maths add up. And those three things are kind of what DevOps is there to solve, right?
Absolutely. I think I'm visualizing that triangle that we keep talking about in these sessions.
Yeah, for triangles.
Triangles and square onions. Now, we've got the triangle we use quite a lot of: speed, cost, and quality. Now, we kind of use that for, well, in DevOps, what do the business care about and what do you want to achieve with DevOps? But actually, you kind of apply that for any kind of business need, regardless of whether it's tech or not. You can kind of group it, what businesses want, into those three, well, into that triangle, right? So the company wants stuff at a quick manner, they want stuff in a cheap manner if possible, and they want it done to a quality standard. And that's no different to DevOps, really. We want to make sure that we're delivering products in a quick, efficient manner without, spending too much and without reducing the quality as part of it. We want to make sure that we're keeping it cost effective, optimizing cost whilst not slowing stuff down, and again, not affecting the quality. And then you want the quality to be strong without it costing too much. So where does DevOps come into this? We've spoken about it quite a lot, Thomas, but with your experience with various clients where you've worked on this, how do you find the explaining of what DevOps is and relating it back to the triangle?
I mean, I usually ask people, why is it? If someone comes to you and says, I want to do DevOps, the first question should be why, and which of those three things do you care most about? It's a really interesting question to get someone at the business level or in senior leadership to think about.
What do you care most about?
Do I care most about getting lots of change done? Or do I care most about saving money and keeping within budget? Or do I care most about quality? And the answer to that question will vary from the same person depending on what the current issue is. If all the systems decide breaking, or if all the users are complaining, got to get the quality right. If the quality is good, but we've got a huge backlog, got to sort that out. If I've exceeded all my budgets for this year, then it's the money. And the money is kind of a by exception thing of I've run out of it. But all those things, most CIOs will go through each of those phases in the course of their tenure, and they're going to care about each one of them in turn. And similarly, the business will care about the same.
So really, you want to care about, well, you might care about a particular one more. You really want to care about all three, really. And it will be a combo of those three, which when we talk about the what DevOps is and how it's going to be implemented, that's the kind of stuff you want to relate it back into the business cases. You don't just want DevOps for DevOps sake, just for the buzzword. You want to link it back to the outcomes and the expectations of what the business need, essentially. It isn't just for fun, it is a business at the end of the day.
Might be fun as well.
Oh, it is good fun, absolutely. Not sure for business always see it like that, but for us it's good fun. So there you go. So how involved have you been, I guess, from the, let's say, the inception of DevOps in organizations, helping to kind of build out that business case?
Yeah, so sometimes we're getting involved, and there's been attempts to roll out DevOps, and sometimes those have started from, say, perhaps a technology head or from technology teams, and they've got a lot of really good ideas of how to improve the automation of how they deliver change, for example. But what they've struggled with perhaps is getting that business buy-in. And sometimes it does come from the top. You've got teams who perhaps you're working on quite legacy technologies. They're struggling with how to move them forward. And someone comes in leadership or in the business says, how do we adopt more modern ways of working? DevOps sounds cool. Let's where do we go with that? And then the question is, how do you shift the culture and the technology and the processes in the teams? In a big organization, it's like turning a massive ship, isn't it?
Yeah.
How do you shift that without breaking everything in the process?
With extreme difficulty from experience. And just make sure you've got all three in balance. Like, you can easily change the people, you can easily change the tech, but that's nothing if you don't have all of those three things together. That's the challenge.
The process as well. And probably the biggest, there's a couple of things that I've seen organizations do. Sometimes they'll simply set up what they call a DevOps team. And you might have this in your organization, a DevOps team, and they're in charge of the environments, or they're in charge of writing infrastructure as code. And having someone managing your environments or writing infrastructure as code is a great thing. It's not a DevOps team.
But that's more ops, really. That's how I would see it, really. You want the functions married together, essentially.
Yeah, you can end up doing more, it's like dev ... ops over the other side of the organization still, and you still don't have that one way of thinking. And the other thing that can happen is people go, DevOps, we must have a tool for that. And you get a lot of focus on the technology. And again, that doesn't, unless you change how you work organizationally and the processes and the culture, that technology doesn't deliver any benefits. It just adds another level of complexity into how things work today.
And I guess going back to, that speed, cost, quality triangle, those people, processes, technologies, they need to be put in place. But obviously the business needs to know that, they're pumping money into bringing specialized people in. They're pumping money into a nice tool chain, lots of the best technologies. They need to make sure they're getting the return on investment, essentially. So that's a really key thing to, when you're going through and planning how DevOps looks like and how to get along your DevOps roadmap. That's a really important thing to highlight, I would say. Otherwise, the business, just from a pure financial perspective, can't get behind it.
Yeah. And particularly if you don't get all those things right and you start having problems, then it just causes you more pain than you started out with, and it will derail the adoption of the benefits you could be getting. One organization I've been working with, they tried to make a lot of improvements. They got a third party in to do a lot of cloud migration and building microservices and so on, and they put a lot of money into that, but they didn't change how they worked in the culture. They didn't change the processes. They didn't make the best use of the technology they had, and actually they ended up with a very fragile technology stack, which wasn't supported right, which wasn't built right. It started causing those outages. It started spending loads of extra money trying to resolve those outages, throwing extra capacity at it to try to get around issues. And it slowed everyone down. And so you got the opposite of everything they were trying to do, because they hadn't looked at the big picture when this third party came in to change things.
We call that the anti-DevOps, maybe.
Anti-DevOps.
That's a new phrase to coin, the anti-DevOps. Dear. So I think we know what the business care about.
So what is DevOps? What are you actually going to change? Mr. DevOps, you can talk about that. Rest my voice a bit.
Yes, no, absolutely. What is DevOps? It's quite a long question, really. So, as you said before, right, it's the functions coming together developers, testers, basically see it as your software development lifecycle is a nice way I like to see it, or the nice little, you got the nice loop of DevOps from plan to release and monitor. It's the function around all of that essentially, and it's making sure you've not got silos like you typically would do in like your waterfall methods, where you've got the developers doing the developers, product owners doing the product ownership, testers doing the testing, the observability people having a look at the nice dashboards. It's the marriage of all of that together, really. And that's really what you want to try and achieve when you're talking about how do we go on our DevOps journey, our DevOps roadmap. The ultimate end goal is to get those functions working together, essentially, to provide those business benefits for the top business, essentially. How you actually go about implementing that is quite long and lots of different parts to that. I think you started with the people, process, technology. And that's something we've spoken about, a pair of us before. I think that's a good point to start on, really, is, as you said, you can have all the tools in the world and what have you, but actually if you don't have the right processes in place, you don't have the right people who can actually utilize them, then it's kind of a bit of a futile exercise. You need all of those three singing from the same hymn sheet and having equal focus to be able to make DevOps, the whole dev, testing, everyone working together to work, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, that ownership piece is key, right? That's why, I have a team that writes infrastructure as code. It's not DevOps, right? It's anti-DevOps, because you've got some other team that owns the infrastructure, and that your team that's writing the other code then has to call on to write the infrastructure as code and throw their code over the fence to them so they can deploy it on that. And again, you've just got another barrier between an offset of silos. What you need to have is ownership of business outcomes in one place, and a product-based operating model works really well with DevOps, so that your product owner is not one organization I'm sitting with at the moment. They've got teams of engineers, but then the product owner sits somewhere in the business, and it's very disconnected between what the product owner thinks and what they're trying to achieve, and then what the engineers are trying to achieve, and they've got to then fix technical debt. But how does that fit into that big picture? Because the product owner is separate from the engineering team, again, you just don't have ownership in one place. And then there's a testing function somewhere else, and you've got to say, hey, can I have a tester look at this? And again, you've got another hop that you're going through. Whereas ideally, you've got a team that owns what this product does. They're then out there solving real problems based on real data to deliver that value for the business and proving it does it. And whether it's quality or security or scalability, or does the thing work, the buck stops with them.
Yeah, I've got a nice little picture to paint with this. I think we talk about the silos, kind of think like you're building the walls between each of the functions. Really, DevOps is smashing down those walls, essentially bringing everyone into the common room, essentially. But once you've done it for one team, you've got organization. They're not just going to have one team. They've got, potentially tens, hundreds, thousands of teams. And it's a real challenge to get all the teams sing from the hymn sheet even still. You can get one team doing good DevOps practices, but you need to make sure that if you've got an organization full of teams, they're all doing the same, which, ideas of community practice come in, and just, at a basic level, communication, which sometimes it's crazy. Even now, I see clients and their dev teams and our DevOps teams, the communication isn't there. So they might call it DevOps, but then if you've got those silos and you've got a lack of communication, it just doesn't work, and you're not ultimately achieving the goal of DevOps and the business goals, right?
We did a lot of work on this at UKHSA a few years ago now, when obviously UKHSA was formed out of Test and Trace and Public Health England and some other bits and pieces. And in Test and Trace in particular, because it's been spun up at high speed during the COVID pandemic, you had a lot of different third parties who brought their own tools and accelerators and so on in to get started very quickly. And the challenge was coming out of that situation into a world where things were optimized, where things were more cost-effective and more effective at delivering change in this new organization, which had a new combined roadmap of where to get to. And the first thing we tackled there was we basically looked at the different practices of the teams, and so the process and the technologies they were using, and we drew together based on the best ways that people were doing stuff. Here is a high-level process that we're going to follow for our DevOps teams, and here are the best used tool stacks that support that. So look at that technology, and then put together a single DevOps toolchain. Now, you can imagine imagine you're in a team who doesn't use the new standard DevOps toolchain.
I've been there, trust me. It's not pretty. It's not pretty.
You don't like it, right? You don't like it.
Absolutely not.
But what we tried to do then was make that as easy as possible for those teams to understand and get benefit from. So we didn't say to everyone, you must use ye old central tool chain. We said, okay, you've got a great way of using this particular tool chain over there. You're still using Atlassian Suite. We don't want to pay for that long term, but what we're doing here, we're using a centralized around GitHub and a set of other tools. We're using GitHub. We're building accelerators and standard pipelines and so on, which will make it much easier to work with GitHub in the future. And when you're ready, come over, adopt it, and start to see the benefits.
Yeah.
And that, alongside actually tracking how effective the different teams were, soon started to make a difference in how teams behaved and how they felt as well about the whole process.
And I think talking about the tool chain, really, it covers the whole software development lifecycle. And a lot of these tools, like, there are many others available, like Jira, Azure DevOps, for example. If you look at the whole software development lifecycle from requirements down to sign-off, really, tools like that do address a lot of the needs in between, take Azure DevOps. Good for eliciting requirements, very good backlog, very good sprint management, Kanban management. The pipelines are built in. You've got test strategy, test plans of some kind. You've got the ability to track your DORA metrics, which is the team application, the team tracking you were talking about there. Similar with Jira, it's streamlining the number of tools you can use, essentially, because there's no point having lots of tools to do one particular job, right?
The same tools aren't necessarily best for all the different things in the organization you're working with. The UK, say, we ended up with GitHub in the middle, and then we stuck with Jira for managing dev backlogs and tickets, and then there were some teams who were still using GitLab, and we kind of decided that we would stay in a position where we had both because they're different advantages in different places. So it's not there must be only one, but the more you can standardize, easier it is to support. It made a huge difference. We saved literally millions in tooling costs over a couple of years.
As a businessman, I'm hearing that and I'm thinking, ka-ching, fantastic. You've done my job. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it certainly ticked the cost box, but it meant it's much faster for the teams to work as well, because they didn't have to. We didn't have to maintain all these different sets of tooling, sets of automation, and we could focus on one set of automation, one set of central standards, and the teams could adopt it and move forward much quicker. And what helped from a business perspective, getting buy-in to that technical change that was enabling DevOps, was partly having the metrics. We used DORA metrics from Google to track it, but having some way to track how fast the teams are working and how much quality they're delivering. And as soon as we started rolling that out across teams, it was easier for the teams to see where they fitted into that picture and to start adopting the changes to see benefits.
For sure. I know we said at the beginning about people submitting questions. I think people might have been submitting questions directly to your teams, Thomas. So sorry if you've heard some Teams notification pings. You're just a popular man having all these questions fired to you. Feel free to fire them into the LinkedIn chat, and we'll happily answer them for you. I think one of the things there about getting other teams singing from the same hymn sheet. There are a couple of things I've seen on there as well. So I guess the concept of a community of practice, bringing all these functions together for a particular subject and making sure that there's like a center where everyone can stay on the same page over certain things. I know we're working with a client at the moment, and one of the things we're kind of helping is to shape how this particular one is QA, but shaping how that particular community of practice runs so that it's acting the way it should do. You want those communities of practice to take for good practices within that particular area, share them across the organization. So then it kind of galvanizes the mind. They see a good idea. Oh, okay, this is how we do it in this particular team. This is how we should be doing it in the organization. And it's not, it goes back to the phrase of sharing is caring. It's exactly like that, right? And you're building up the knowledge across the organization, which may well be in line with the tool chain as well. It might even be covering, we do testing in a particular tool chain using this technology. Communication is key. And still the number of organizations I see where they don't communicate enough in those kind of forums, a lot of the investment, a lot of the time being spent to get these practices is wasted when you're not kind of getting everyone to follow them, essentially. So that's a really key point.
Yeah, so there's a key things if you're thinking about DevOps and what needs to change if you're going to get those business benefits. Yes, it will involve automation using tooling. There will be technology changes. There may be changes in your technology stack. If you're trying to run on a mainframe and do DevOps, it may not be the best combination, for example.
Although if someone's tried, I'd love to see that. That'd be
and then on the process level, there's going to be changes in terms of how you see your SDLC. You see the ownership of it coming into that team, and you see that process being much more focused on delivering quick change with automated quality, so that you don't get left behind. And then from a people perspective, again, you'll have that ownership, that bringing the right people together with the right skills. It'll give you, again, something a bit like our onion from before, core people in the middle, setting the right standards, delivering the right accelerators for those standards, enabling the culture in the organization so that teams can start to adopt it. And as that happens, the teams will see benefits because their lives will get easier. The business will see benefits because things will get quicker to deliver. They will get cheaper to deliver, and they will get hopefully better quality if you're doing it right.
Yeah. So I guess just to bring this back to the title then, so we're talking about how you bring the business and tech sides together to create that unified DevOps roadmap that the business gets excited about. I think we understand how you implement it. We understand why the business should get excited about it and why really the teams should be excited about it as well. I guess the big question now is how do you actually go about going through that plan? That's a tricky one. And I don't know about you, Thomas, but I've seen the various clients I've worked with, there's not been one same way of approaching how you actually map out that plan and how you actually get DevOps up and running.
Well, yeah, everyone's in a different place to start with, right? I mean, if you and I are in different meeting pods in the same office. Imagine if we were in different offices and we both wanted to get to the same place for lunch. We wouldn't follow the same route.
Well, that's a relief you've not been following me to lunch, but you're always welcome. But no, it is true. Everyone does have a different starting point. So I know when I've got involved, we do a thing called a maturity assessment to see kind of across the software development lifecycle where the teams are at. And then based on that, it kind of allows us to pinpoint particular areas of, okay, this is the area that needs elevating to get it to best practice, essentially. I think a lot of the times I've been involved, it's mainly been around the testing, funnily enough. So they might have, let's say, the processes in place around the team, but they're not getting the most out of the technologies or the processes around the QA. And there are others where it's about DORA metrics, the ability to track the team's output through the Google metrics they line up about speed and throughput and quality of the products and the bugs found in production. Really.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the ones I've seen, often where people have started to adopt DevOps, right? They've already built in perhaps some automated pipelines, so they've got something there. Hopefully, they're using some kind of source control and they're managing that properly. They're perhaps already doing good development practices, because a lot of the time DevOps comes out of a development team, and often where it is, I think most of the assessments I've done, the top three are probably the testing, like you say, the monitoring, because that's a bit of a mental shift, right? If you're in the development team, that was the ops world, and you're responsible for how things monitored. and then probably right back on the left-hand side of the development lifecycle, the product and requirements, and actually getting that managed and tracked in a way which has real ownership in that team.
Yeah, I think you actually saying those 3 points. Those, if you think of our internal team, of which this is kind of how we both started into this space, as we had our internal development team, right? And actually, you saying those 3 things, they were probably the 3 main things, maybe including the actual process of the day in, day out development.
Those are the things we struggled with, right?
Yeah, they were the things we struggled with. They were the things we tried to address first, right? I mean, maybe less so on the monitoring, although that is a very valid point on, because, you know, from a business perspective, bringing it back to the business, they need to be able to see that all of the things which have been implemented as part of, you know, the DevOps changes is actually having the desired effect. So, you know, not just application dashboards, you've got your DORA dashboards, but then there will be other things around, you know, you might have heard of OKRs. I know you've heard of OKRs. You are Mr. OKR for one of our clients. But OKRs are useful for tracking that kind of stuff.
Yeah, tracking the actual business value.
Yeah.
But however you're tracking the business value, you know, that's something which that team needs to care about. And sometimes just the most simple thing you can do to start getting change in an organization is just start tracking what value did we deliver as a team. You know, if you're in a delivery team and you are delivering changes, start tracking on a weekly, sprintly basis or whatever. What does this actually mean for the business? This thing we've delivered, what's that worth? And just in doing that, you're already taking some ownership, right? Regardless of whether the rest of the organization is changing around you. Just one thing you could do is say, I am going to, every time we finish a sprint, we release a change, we're going to say, this is why it matters to the business what we've just done. Yeah, and then other things will start to line up with that, right? You'll start to go, well, this new set of requirements that we've been given, why does that matter to the business? And what's the actual value that comes out of it? That may sound a silly or simple thing, but most organizations I've worked with, it's actually very difficult to quantify that. You might be able to say, well, of course this matters to the business because this is a key screen in a key application. But what difference, if you're going to put it in, number of users or pounds, shillings and pence, leave out the shillings, how do you actually quantify the benefits? And if you start doing that, you are actually taking ownership of that as a product.
Yeah, I know from experience, it's that kind of defining the value as such, and the benefit is one of the trickier things. I know this is something we've looked at internally, is the stuff you develop, you need to try and back with some kind of objective of this is what the benefit is. It's not always all that clear and all that tangible. But if you can figure out, it is really important. Because, I mean, I think it's fair enough to say, right, that these changes don't happen overnight and they don't happen with a significant amount of, not brute force, but you need the leadership to, make changes and the funding. I'm just remembering our example of our team where, we had the ideas of what was failing, but then it took like a bit of investment from our company to kind of get the right people in to help identify where the issues were and to drive that forward. And, this was 8 years ago, and now look where we are. We're talking about it, and we know what to do, right? So it comes from the top at the end of the day, right? But you need to be able to track those benefits and in a way that the leadership understand this is why it's important and this is why we should care and invest.
So there's something you could change, right? So just start tracking some of those things. So as well as this business benefit that I'm delivering, start tracking how long it takes you to deliver stuff. If you're not measuring like Google's 4 key DORA metrics, start measuring even just one of them. Start measuring your change lead time and go, it takes us currently 2 months to get a change into production from the moment the code's written. That sounds like I measured up. It happens. I'm going to do something to improve that. I'm going to highlight this so that the business knows that here's something that we need to put work into. Go off and, if you've got some time to improve how you do things practically, go off and automate something. What would you automate first, Dan? That you do the automating.
Yeah, there are so many things I would automate, though. That's the problem. I'd need to narrow it down what I'd automate. I guess the main thing from my side is for testing. There are so many you can do, though. Testing is not the only one.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in plenty of places where there's a regression suite which takes insert number of weeks here
Yeah.
to run, right? And this must be run before anything can get put into production. And hopefully, most people have left those days behind. Some people haven't yet, but you may still have a regression suite that takes X days to run, and so on. And how much can you automate, and how much can you move away from? We must hand it over to some other party who will run this very lengthy process to deliver this outcome and then feed it back to us, which then goes back around another cycle, and everyone is very slow.
Yeah, there's probably something there, just thinking, there's probably something there around AI. I mean, you talk about the automation of the tests in particular. Some people might see that as a bit of a mundane job. Maybe it is worth us talking about AI in a future session, because there is a real use for AI being utilized within the DevOps lifecycle to kind of allow the developers more time to focus on those more complex problems. And I guess applying it to this, be able to actually put DevOps in motion with the use of AI, being able to focus on more of the processes and getting things in place. So maybe we've just found our next topic.
I mean, AI is there to free up your time from the boring things, right? To actually use your brains for the interesting bits. And the biggest challenge for a lot of teams in adopting better processes is getting that bit of time free. So you go, I'm going to use AI in this way. And as more organizations start to put in place AI policies and open up AI tool sets for engineers, that becomes possible. I'm going to use AI in this way to free up this time, which will be used to improve the process and to improve the culture and the technology that we're using.
Yeah, spot on. I'm just trying to think. That gives us our roadmap, unless you think there's anything fundamental that we're not inciting on the roadmap.
Well, I think that there's specific things you can do there, right? The question is, how do you pull that together? And if you're in leadership and you are going, how do we roll this out? Where do you start? And I think you've got to start by measuring. You've got to work out what are those things you care about as a business. Start measuring them, the time, the quality, in a way that makes sense to the business. And then you don't have to do a big bang change everything. You can start with, this is a team which is either it needs a lot of work, or it's already very mature and it could move faster, and start to prove changes. Say to that team, I want you to spend 10% of your time on implementing these changes, which will move us towards DevOps, and let's see how that impacts the metric. And then let's spend a bit more time, and let's get another team doing the same thing. And as you build up momentum, watch those numbers improve. You can, either if you've got enough time on your hands, you can move it up all the way yourself, or you can go, hey, look, we've improved ourselves 10% of the way. It's going to need some investment to get us the rest of the way, but look at the difference that makes to all these things the business cares about. The best way to get change is to prove that change works.
Absolutely.
So we've got a question here, which is, how long does it take to implement DevOps? Thank you, whoever put that question in.
Thank you.
It's probably a little bit how long is a piece of string, but how long how long are the pieces of string you've seen, Dan?
Well, it's largely down to that maturity. So I take one of the clients I'm working with in the financial sector at the moment. I think it's more or less starting from the very beginning, not just because it's a very good place to start, as Julie Andrews might have you say, but there wasn't really too much in the way of process. I think they had the right roles, just not the processes. They didn't really know what they were doing with the technology. So how many months are we now into it? Maybe 9 or 10 months into the program. And only just now you can start to see the pieces moving together. So there's been a lot of work to get it to the state where it is starting to move, but there's still plenty to do. So you're probably looking at, I don't know, because we're both on this project, Thomas, so I'm reluctant to say this, but you're probably looking at maybe a good other year or two. It's the culture changing as well. It's not just the bits you're doing around the process, it's the technology. It's making sure that those people actually know what's going on and actually follow that new way of working. That's the thing that takes the time. It doesn't always take that long. I know I'm working with another client where, you know, we've been involved for like 4 or 5 months, and already they've got a well-established, essentially center of excellence, which teams are now starting to utilize. So, but they came from a slightly more mature state. So
yeah, I think
it really varies.
That's probably a good range. If you're fairly mature and you've got the right investment appetite, maybe a 6-month thing. It can be a multi-year thing. And that might be the right thing for you to make it a multi-year thing, because that would enable you to do less upfront investment, and you can bring teams along as they're ready. There's no, it must be done in this time frame, and if you're slower than that, you're an idiot, because in a lot of cases, the slower approach might be the right one to take, and it lets you actually make sure you're doing it properly. A lot of the time, the issues that you get we've implemented DevOps because you've tried to do it really fast, and it's, again, you've got a very big ship to shift, and either you sink the ship in the process, or or it takes you a while to do it.
Yeah, without wanting to become a Titanic meme or anything like that. See, we've got another question in. So this is around what are the effective ways that we've seen of communicating the business value of DevOps to non-technical leadership, especially when we're trying to justify the investment or the long-term cultural change that would be required to get DevOps up and running. This is a good question. Thank you.
Yeah, so take UKHC example. So we got the CIO very bought into like 2 or 3 key metrics, again, from the DORA metric framework in that case. And that became something which was being reviewed by senior leadership very frequently, because at the end of the day, it's making sure that they can equate the things they care about to the stuff that's being done and measured. And they knew that they needed to be able to deliver change faster. It was costing a huge amount, and it was very slow to deliver change. And so the question was, how do we sort this out? You've got to have, it comes from, in the end of the day, your technical leadership in the organization. If they can get behind what needs to happen, if you understand what needs to be delivered on the ground to get those business things across, then you just need a way of measuring it. And if you can measure it and show progress, that's the way to get buy-in. All right. And in too many, and I'm struggling to think of many places where this has been done well, it's very difficult to actually show the metrics that the business cares about. It should be so simple, because it is simply how fast are we delivering change, how much are we spending on it, and how little, hopefully, are things breaking. And you just need metrics that show that. You just need to be able to show progress on them, and you will very, very quickly, believe me, get buy-in, because the business will be very excited about those 3 things coming right together.
In a way, if it was that easy, we'd have an easier task here. So it's
that would be here.
I'd be somewhere, I don't know. Well, I guess there are no other questions coming in, but we'll give it a second or so, I guess, just whilst we're waiting on that. Thank you very much for your time, Thomas. Thank you, everyone, for your time in attending this. I've enjoyed it, and I hope you have got some information about that, on why about DevOps roadmaps, and why DevOps is important, and why we should be practicing it, and why we should get businesses, and how we should get businesses interested in it, really. If
you've got specific questions about your business, you drop us a line on LinkedIn or whatever. We're very happy to come up with ideas, and we've seen it done different ways in a lot of different places, and the things that work and the things that don't. So happy to have grab half an hour, have a coffee if you're in London, have a chat about it, and work out what might be the best way for you to show it.
Or in my case, have a hot chocolate. But no, please drop a message if you're interested. We've got goodness knows how many years combined between us, and we've seen a lot, so we're happy to help. I don't see any other questions. I don't see any other questions coming in. So there's one last thing just to tee up before we go. So we are not the only roadshow on Capacitas who go on these audio tours. We've got another one coming up. I'm sure we will.
Roadshow.
Yes, I mean, it's not quite as dynamic as with Dan and Thomas, but this is going to be a good one you don't want to miss, to be fair. So Mandel, who is our co-founder at Capacitas, will be doing a exclusive audio event with one of the chief architects from Qualtrics, Steve Yang, as we're going to try and dive deeper into the evolution and economics of running a large-scale microservice architecture in the cloud, which is kind of relevant because microservices, DevOps, tech, this is just part of the technology, people, process again. So it all interconnects.
Yeah, the Qualtrics are huge scale organizations. So it's certainly going to be very interesting to see how they've affected that sort of change and the sort of challenges that they've got. Because if they can deal with those challenges at that scale, probably most people can do it as well.
So it's definitely worth attending that audio event. And if you have other questions on that event about DevOps, feel free to drop us a line as well, or Manzo or Steve. We'll be more than happy to address them. I think we'll call it there. So thank you very much, everyone, for attending, and always a pleasure, Thomas. Until next time, I'll speak to you then.
Thanks, Dan. Goodbye from me as well.